are Tyrians. We are many races, several professions. We practice the arts of combat as well as healing. We have foes, and we fight them without mercy. And it's time for us to claim back what is ours. It's time for us to claim back Tyria from the terror of the Elder Dragons. We can't go on living our lives in fear. We have to fight. We have to make a stand. This is our story.
Hello fans of COT Podcast Old and New. As an effort to provide you all with more weekly content, but also more quality content, we'd like to introduce a brand new show that we're calling CoTLorecast.
Boop, boop.
Fans of COT Podcast will remember days in the beginning when we didn't have video and didn't do live shows and we were more focused on the lore more than anything else. And in an effort to get back to that state, we bring you the new lovely COT Lorecast.
Yay!
So we will be releasing this show weekly on Wednesdays, where we'll be discussing just Guild Wars lore. So for updates on the game, Guild Wars discussion, things like that, tune into COT Podcast live Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at twitch.tv/Chronicles of Tyria. So again, without further ado, welcome back, Kaysee and Naveen.
Yay!
Hello!
So, how we feeling being back in the lore business?
I'm excited!
Yeah, it feels like old school, man. You know, it feels like not having video and having the notes in front of us. It feels good. It feels warm and fuzzy on the inside.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I love the live show, but it's always very distracting, and I prefer recording a lore show separate from the live, so that we're not distracted and we're actually into the show and giving the lore out there. And I feel like the past couple weeks we have strayed away from the lore, which we were all about before,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited to give it to them again. Give the lore. Give it.
Yeah.
It felt good researching lore again, so I'm very excited.
Yeah.
So, I guess we'll move on to it here. Today's lore topic is going to be a topic we kind of danced around for a while here, and it's the Elder Dragons.
Yeah!
So, if you don't know what an Elder Dragon is, I feel like you don't know what Guild Wars is.
Go back and reevaluate your Guild Wars fandom.
Or, if you are new to Guild Wars and you want to learn about what the enemy is, then ignore that statement and welcome to Guild Wars.
Yay!
We're glad to have you joining us.
And thank you for downloading the show.
Yes.
Go on iTunes and rate it 5 stars and leave us a nice comment so that we can give you a shout out in the live show.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely admirable to be getting into the lore like this and actually following these shows and listening to us, because not many people pay attention to the lore, and Guild Wars has such deep, rich, and in-depth lore that I definitely advocate that, if you want to enjoy the game to the fullest, to really feel that satisfaction of when you kill, certain things, you need to know the lore and know where people are coming from, know where things are coming from. So hopefully this podcast, if you're new, will help you out. And even if you're an old member, it will really help you, especially with the dragons, know what you're up against.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, to start us off here, again, we'll just give you a brief overview of what an Elder Dragon and what they are, and we're going to go to the ever-popular Movement of the World document that was written by Decimus, the historian. Just a little bit of background is before we actually had any real information on Guild Wars 2, this whole huge document was one of the things that was originally released for us. And funny enough, it even has some things that haven't happened yet, even now that we have the game. So I'll read you off. Yeah, right? This was, 5 years ago? So, here we go. Over the last 250 years, the races of Tyria have seen a great deal of strife and war. Conflicts between the humans and the Char, the Norn and any who might challenge them, and among other sentient races have continually threatened the peace of the continent, but these are not the only issues. Although sentient races are one threat, there are, as always, wild creatures and monsters across the countryside, dangers to be faced, and troubles to be conquered. But on Tyria, there are even worse things yet to be faced. The cataclysms that tore apart the land and flooded Lion's Arch were not caused by natural forces, no more than were there earthquakes that freed the destroyers in the northern Shiver Peaks. These were both caused by the surfacing of ancient powers, true dragons, more dangerous than anything Tyria has ever known before. Glint and Kunavang were both youths, lesser powers to the ancients that came before. These mystic and terrifying creatures rival the gods themselves. Although these creatures are called dragons, they are as different from Kunavang and Glint as night to day. More powerful, older, born of different, unfathomable magic, these horrors are controlled by no god, nor any other power known to the races of Tyria. What connection they have to these, quote, younger dragons is unknown, but they certainly do not possess the mercy or familiarity with the sentient races of the world that Kunavang or Glint portray. Their cycle of awakening reaches back to the time of the Giganticus Lupicus and even further back into prehistory. The only thing known about these monsters is that they have no pity, no curiosity, no concern at all for the other races of the world. Their only goal seems to be to dominate, control, and to destroy. So, I'm not going to go into this. Go ahead, sorry.
I really believe that whole thing should just end with a dun dun dun. That was really heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that, as we know, is a little bit different. We know a little bit more about, say, for instance, Glint than we did when this document came out. But, you know, for the most part, I'd say almost all that holds true.
Mm-hmm.
So, now that we gave you kind of a little bit of background about what an Elder Dragon is and, you know, how we kind of learned of them initially, let's talk about the 5 definite and pretty much the definite 6 Elder Dragons. And we're going to start with, we want to start with Primordus?
Sure.
Okay. All right, Naveen, take it away. So,
Primordus. He is the first Elder Dragon to awaken. And we saw a tiny bit of him in Guild Wars 1, Eye of the North. And spoiler, at the end of the game, when we finally defeat the Great Destroyer, we get one of those awesome cutscenes like usual. And then bam! What we thought was a statue of a dragon opens its eyes. Dun dun dun! So, Primordus' champion is, was the Great Destroyer. As I said before, the Asura, did I mention that? No, I didn't. Okay, so the Asura, though Primordus, they thought Primordus was a statue, and that was a magical statue, hence why it was emitting a high energy. But in fact, that was Primordus' resting place. Yet, they built this central transfer chamber on it. Big mistake. And if you go back in Guild Wars 1, you'll be able to witness all of it. If you haven't played Guild Wars 1, well, sucks for you. That's why we're doing the podcast. Primordus was supposed to wake up as we played Guild Wars 1, but since we defeated its champion, it stayed asleep for 2 generations. It has yet to be seen in Guild Wars 2, but I have a feeling that when we'll see a whole bunch of destroyers acting up more than usual, because right now we see them in game currently, it's going to be a sign for the new dragon to come. When Primordus woke up, other Elder Dragons did too, because as I said, he was the first to wake up. And as it woke, tons of destroyers invaded the underground where the Asura lived, and so they were forced to leave and establish their home on higher grounds. Not only the Asura, but this is the reason why we can see scrits and dredge. Scrits and dredge. Everybody knows. Anyways, on higher grounds as well. When we defeated its champion in Guild Wars 1, we had the help of the dwarves who summoned the spirit of the great dwarf, and they were turned into stone in doing so. After we defeated the champion, Most of the remaining stone dwarves stayed underground, resolved to fight the destroyer and fight Primordus. But to this day, the elder dragon still roams the depths of Tyria, and this was what forced the Skrit to also go higher up ground, as I mentioned earlier. They used to live much deeper in the depths, but now are obliged to get at their shinies out in the sun. All this to say that what was once underground are now being seen across Tyria, some becoming threat, other allies, and the destroyers now roam freely on the lands in southwest of Tyria. When you play Guild Wars 2, if you go to the Dermot Hall, there's a book called The Elder Dragons. And if you read it, you'll find something really interesting inside. It reads, we know not when these elder dragons came to be, only when we came to be aware of their awakening. When you flip the page, you can choose from all of the dragons. If you choose Fire, Primordus 1128E, it reads, Primordus was the first to awaken in our time. Its previous awakening is the only one still known to history. Dwarven text tell of great destroyers now believed to be a reference to Primordus and his army. Primordus rules over fire. As of this writing, his minions, known as destroyers, plague the wetlands in the southwest of Tyria, as I said before. So, basically, you learn that Primordus' previous awakening is the only one still known to history. If you browse a little bit of the web, you'll see many interviews with writers from ArenaNet, Jeff Grubb being one of the most known across all of them. And Guild Mag interviewed him and asked him the following question. Primordus was the first one to awake, while most of the other dragons moved places, be it raising a continent or flying south. Primordus decided to stay in the depths of Tyria. Why did it decide to stay there? Jeff Grubb answers with, Primordus has remained beneath the surface, but that doesn't mean he hasn't moved around. He has been clearing huge tracts of the underground regions of the world, and his activities have sent a number of other races to the surface, including one that the Asura are all too familiar with, and so are we now, the Rodential Skrit. As a result of his activities, the minions of Primordus can be found almost anywhere on the surface. So, speculation time. Probably we will see more underground races whose Primordus' champion, I don't know, the Great Destroyer and the Destroyer of Life were two of them in Guild Wars 1, but we defeated them. So, since Primordus is now going on the ground and clearing pathways, and he kind of evicted the Skrits and the dwarves, not the dwarves, I mean the Asura up, to the higher lands. It's quite possible that we will see other races in the future. And who's the next champion? I don't know. Will it be a giant destroyer? I don't know. But basically, those are two questions that I'm asking myself. I only have one bit of trivia about Primordus. Primordus comes from the Latin root primordium, literally meaning the first to rise. And although I thought this would have been a huge piece on Primordus, came to be like, well, that's basically it for Primordus, because there isn't all that much after all, and I think that ArenaNet is hiding most of it for when the dragon actually comes out in game.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And I think if I remember, well, I don't know if this is actually just something that I made up in my head, but people talking about how he is terrorizing, the underground depths of Tyria. Mm-hmm. Well, that's where the old original Asura Gate network was.
Yes.
So it's highly possible that he could be anywhere underground Tyria in a matter of seconds without us ever knowing.
Yeah, that's very true. That's true. You're absolutely right. And I forgot to mention it at the beginning. The reason why the Asura actually built all that system, all the Asura gates at that place, was because, the dragon was there first and was emitting this huge magical energy. So they chose to start building the gates around there. But that just reminded me of that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He could be anywhere.
Yeah, which makes it pretty scary, honestly, when you think about it. Because that could mean... I don't even know how one would attempt to fight a dragon that could be anywhere at any time, within a matter of seconds.
Do you think in game, maybe at some point, they're going to shut down the Asura gates to fight the dragon? Oh, that'd be crazy. And then mounts will come to be. What?
But you're causing trouble now, Naveen.
Yeah, you're really causing trouble.
Sorry.
But I don't think... Well, if I remember correctly, they end up into an old Asura gate in, is it Destiny's Edge, the beginning? They drop down in between when Cade and Ritlock and Logan are running, and they drop down to avoid the giants, the ogres or whatever it is.
It's been a while since I've read the book.
Yeah, and I believe it's an ancient dwarven city they fall into, and there's old cracked Asura gates and stuff like that.
That's possible.
It's been a while. But
I have to reread the book.
Yeah, so... But yeah, Primordus, like you said, there were destroyers there are destroyers in the game right now. I remember I freaked out during beta when I found them.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I was like, what? Destroyers?
Because I thought we defeated all of them. We defeated the one in either North and the other one, that destroyer of hope or of life or whatever. Yeah. There was one that you find that you read about in what's it called in Destiny's Edge. The Edge of Destiny defeats one.
I can't remember. I really have to go back and read both books.
Well, I know they do defeat another Primordus one, and they believe they used part of the destroyer itself to defeat it. Oh. But we cover that in our Destiny's Edge, Edge of Destiny podcast. So we'll move on then.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll be taking the next one, and this is one that's all too familiar to anyone who's played Guild Wars 2, and that is Zhaitan. I want to just start preemptively and say I'm not going to go too much into what happens, because the majority of Zhaitan's lore we learn through playing Guild Wars 2 as we complete the personal story campaign. Yeah. So I don't want to spoil any of it, because a lot of it, if you haven't already, you'll get to play through it. Or if you have already, you don't want to hear me talk about all the missions that you've done. And it may bring back horrible memories of Traherne. So I'll just get on to what we have from prior to the game. So again, if you don't know, Zhaitan is the Elder Dragon of the Undead. And as Naveen had mentioned, he is one of the two dragons that we know of that actually emits some sort of passive, radiating magical energy. Like she mentioned, Primordus was asleep and emitted this great energy, and then the Asura used this great energy to create the central transfer chamber and make their Asura Gate network, and that's why they chose to build there. Mm-hmm. Well, it was the same thing that happened, although they didn't know it, when the human gods came from wherever they were to Tyria. They built the great city of Ara on top of Zhaitan's resting place because of the magical energy that he was exuding. Mm-hmm. So I have a little line from the Movement of the World that we talked about earlier. And it says, "The rise of a dragon beneath Or caused the entire continent to surface, sparking a tidal wave that swept the coastline and drowned thousands." So to take that and go a little bit further, because remember when we first got the Movement of the World article, it was pretty much just mythical stuff no one knew anything about, and it was all very general. Mm-hmm. So this, known as the Rising of Or, took place in 1219 AE, so again after Primordus Rising. And basically Zhaitan awoke underneath Ara, which, as most of you know, at this point had already been sunk by Vizier Kilbran in an attempt to stop the Char from storming Or. So Ara and all its people sunk, drowned below the surface. Still, on top of Zaitan, he wakes up. The whole continent comes up to the surface with him and makes this giant tidal wave that just floods all of the surrounding area. This is what floods the original Lion's Arch we know from Guild Wars 1. Mm-hmm. It's what floods all the battle isles where you go to do random arenas and all that stuff. Those are totally covered in water, which is why if you go into current day Lion's Arch, you can dive down and see the fountain from Guild Wars 1 because that's all underwater.
Oh, yeah.
Which then means that somewhere off of that is you could find the old random arena isles. If we could swim out that far, you could see them underwater. That'd be kind of cool. Yeah. But we don't have access to that area yet.
No. That'd be a big thing.
Yeah. I don't think they're planning on making us do that much swimming just to get from place to place. Hopefully not.
No, thank you.
So again, like was mentioned in the Movement of the World, you would imagine this big tidal wave drowned thousands upon thousands of people. So you have all the people in current day Lion's Arch, and I mean this stretched for a ways. So all of these people drowned by this tsunami. So not only being the dragon of the undead, did he bring back to life everyone that had died in the sinking of Or in the first place. He now also brought back to life as his risen zombie champion and minions the people that were already dead, but now all the people that he just killed with this giant tidal wave. So off the bat, he's got a huge army. He doesn't have to go make them out of fire and stone like Primordus. People die, they come back to life as his minion. I mean, that's a near limitless supply. Yeah. Because you're going to keep killing people and you're going to keep making your own minions. So, you would think that would make you the most powerful Elder Dragon.
Well,
but,
yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
That was probably the only thing that was powerful of him. His army.
Yeah, and the decaying fleshy bodies, I can't imagine, are the most powerful thing in the world compared to, like, crystal and stone and fire.
Fair enough. So there were, as we know, Lion's Arch, and if you can hear all the when you go to the bank, you can hear all about how pirates who used to run Lion's Arch, can't believe, a nation, a city of pirates, well, ex-pirates, but I get your meaning. That stupid person in the bank there.
No, yeah, you always hear that.
So, previously, there were all these pirate forces outside of Lion's Arch, but the tidal wave, again, destroyed all of them, and this, basically, Zaitan was able to create an entire undead navy from all of these, all of these dead minions take their boats, make this giant undead navy, which helps keep off our trade with Cantha and Alona, which is part of the reason why we're totally shut off from them. So not only did, any previous kind of ports get destroyed by the tidal wave, they were blockading off entrance into Tyria, the continent. But now, honestly, I don't know, because we'll have to see what happens. Maybe we have access to those areas, maybe we don't. I don't know.
Yeah, we have to go through the army first.
Yes, so, but I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, yes, the undead pirates. There's actually a lot more explanation of this in Edge of Destiny through one of Zaitan's previous champions that we learn about, which is, I believe it's pronounced Morgus Leth, I believe, was an undead champion of Zaitan who was, terrorizing the seas all around Lion's Arch, which is why in Edge of Destiny, Captain Magnus the Bloody-Handed, who kind of rules over Lion's Arch, and after the November update, you can actually find him in game in in Lion's Arch. He contracted Destiny's Edge to take out this champion, and they end up, through clever use of bone grinding ship contraptions that Zoja and Snaf create, they end up defeating this champion. So, then they're good and their debt is paid and they can go around killing dragon champions. So that's one previous champion that we know about. So again, if you're interested in Zaitan and some of the his exploits prior to the game, I would check out Edge of Destiny. It's a pretty good book. What else do I have? Again, like I mentioned, the Risen are Zaitan's minions. They're just basically fleshy, decaying zombies. Sometimes they have coral and stuff on them if they were the original ones that were brought back when ore rose.
Mm-hmm. They're nasty looking.
Yeah, and there's gorillas. Undead gorillas in ore. So I guess there were gorillas on, in and around Ara before it sank. So that's interesting.
They're risen chicken too.
Yeah, that's true
Yeah.
too.
I wonder about the minions and if their power comes from Zaitan, and in the sense of after Zaitan loses his power, will they just drop dead? Because if they do drop dead, then that means that the army stopping us from going to Cantha and Alona is gone. Or do they continue
until they're defeated and then they don't come back?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point because unfortunately we just don't know. But because we know it's something we won't get into here, but we know there's potential issues with going to Cantha non-game mechanic wise. So I'd be interested to see what the reasoning is for why, if you're right and they're just gone forever, all of Zaitan's minions. What's the reasoning now why we can't get to Cantha?
Yeah. Probably they don't want us.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, most of the Risen that you'll see in-game are pretty much mindless zombies, all of the kind of trash mobs, but the champions and lieutenants of Zaitan seem to be, like all Elder Dragon champions, have they're more intelligent and they kind of rule over all these mindless undead. So I don't want to ruin too many of the ones that you'll learn about later on, but basically there are a lot of lesser dragons that you'll fight. They all look identical, which kind of bothers me. But there's a handful of them that you'll fight throughout the campaign of Guild Wars 2, and they all look a lot alike, and they're kind of... One of the most popular ones is CoTL because of the chest that he drops after you defeat him, but there are several others just like him.
What's so important about the chest?
Well, because you can get a precursor out of it.
Oh, right.
And you only do it once a day per account. So
shows how much I defeat dragons in that game.
Yeah, any of the world events there, like the fire element, the dragons, they all have a chance to drop a precursor. But you're guaranteed to get at least a rare from each one, if not better than that. So that's pretty much it I have for Zaitan. It's kind of hard to talk too much about him without spoiling the entire plot of the game. More than we already did anyway. The only other thing I have is in COE, when you're going to enter COE, in the Infinity Coil Reactor, there's Zone Black, which is all about it's all the Zaitan-based area of the Infinity Coil Reactor. So that's about it I have for Zaitan, unless you guys have anything else you'd like to chime in for Zaitan.
No.
He's weak as piss?
You get to fight his eyes and his mouth and his nose and his...
Yeah, how does he detach parts of himself? I was really confused by that because he clearly doesn't detach them from his body. But, why does he... I was confused. They don't do a very good job of explaining it either.
Well, so I guess the next dragon on our list here is going to be Jormag.
Jormag! Yeah, so I'm doing Jormag, and I'll just do a brief summary to begin with. Jormag is the elder ice dragon who exists in the northernmost reaches of the Shiver Peak Mountains, and he's commonly referred to as the Living Blizzard. Little is known about his semblance except his tooth alone spans the height of many Norn lengths. He has the ability to corrupt his enemies, turning them into ice broods. He has a cult of Norn followers called the Sons of Svanir, who worship Jormag as the strongest of all the spirit animals. Jormag's ravages are felt most keenly in the northern Shiver Peaks and the Frostgorge Sound and Snowdon Drifts, where inhabitants fight a daily battle against the Elder Dragon and his ice brood. In particular, the Claw of Jormag, Jormag's strongest champion, terrorizes the Kodan fleeing their homeland in the north. So yeah, if you played the game a little bit, you've probably played the Claw of Jormag, which is, like, for a long time my favorite kind of boss battle. Now it's not so much. It's too much lag. But it's kind of like this icy dragon made out of just this kind of crystallized ice, and you fight a lot of corrupted beings there. It's a lot of fun. And but if you really want to know a lot about Jormag, the best place to go is Frostgorge Sound. There is a lot, because it is the northest place we can go. Most northernest place we can go. That's probably better.
I think it's most northern. Most
northern place that you can go. And since Jormag is in the north, you can kind of feel what effect he's having on the world. Jormag woke in 1165 AE and moved south, invading the lands of the Kodan and the Norn. His rise affected much of the northern lands, earthquakes through the lands vastly changing its topography. In particular, the Northern Ocean flooded and created a new inland sea. The Kodan who drifted through the North Seas had fled these and fled inland to the south, trying to escape the ravages of Jormag. The Norn were pushed south into now abandoned dwarven territory. In the battle that pursued, Askia Dragonrender was able to cut Jormag's tooth. The trophy now hangs in the Norn main hall, and many try to cut the tooth, but it seems invulnerable to attacks. So yeah, when he rose up, he had such a really big impact on the Norn and the Kodan. Their livelihoods were ripped apart. So many people killed. And in particular, if you talk to the Kodan that are drifting on their sanctuaries in Frostgorge Sound, you feel really keenly about how sad and terrifying Jormag's effect is. I mean, you talk to Kodan and they're like, my mate was on a ship and I saw the ship go down and my children were with him and stuff like that. And it's really, really sad and Jormag is very, very vicious and, merciless. Also, I find it interesting that, a Norn was able to take off one of the, Jormag's tooth, which is amazing. I kind of think of the logistics of the whole thing. I'm like, I don't know how he did it. How did he get up to the dragon's mouth, for one? And second, how did he cut it? His blade must have been really amazing. And third, did they really stop after the battle? I can just imagine a whole bunch of Norn, just stopping and grabbing the tooth and, hoisting it onto their shoulders and running away. I don't know how that worked, but they did manage to get a tooth back. And I think it's interesting because out of all the dragons, I really feel like, Jormag is the most abused of all the dragons, apart from Zaitan after the end of the campaign, because he has his tooth taken out, and on top of that, years ago the dwarves were able to take some of his blood, and they crafted a blade out of his own blood, so I feel like out of all the other dragons, which we barely even know about, he has been quite damaged in certain ways. So I don't know if he's weak or I don't know. But where Lag was talking before about how Zaitan is able to turn the undead, well, Jormag actually has a different way. He corrupts people and turns them into ice brood, which are also called dragonspawn. And once they have been corrupted by Jormag's power, they serve as Jormag's champions. When corrupted, the body is covered in ice, and prolonged exposure leaves the insides being completely frozen over time. So you can really see this in Sons of Svanir, the like kind of underlings or the people that are not so high up in the Sons of Svanir. You can see that they still have a little bit of fleshiness to their chest, where their shoulders might be covered in ice or their arms might be covered in ice, but in their chest it kind of looks a bit pink still. But then you like see the champions of Jormag, or the higher ups in the shamans of the Sons of Svanir, and they're like completely frozen through and through, and you know they're completely kind of like this. They look like a body encased in ice. So that is how he corrupts. He uses his ice to corrupt people. Just a quick note on the Son of Svanir, just to explain the people who didn't play Guild Wars 1. If you play Guild Wars 1, you actually have a very keen insight into what the Son of Svanir is about. But they do provide a little bit of information in game if you weren't able to play the first one. Jormag's earliest known activity was in 1078 AE. When he corrupted a young Norn male and turned him into his champion. This young Norn was called Svanir, and his sister Jornia were Jornia. His sister Jorah, her name is Jorah. Jornia.
That was their item name. You know how there's Brangelina.
Oh, incest jokes, lovely.
This isn't Game of Thrones.
Yeah, so the younger brother was, I don't know if he was younger, but the brother was called Svanir and his sister's Jorah, and you probably see statues to Jorah everywhere in the Shiver Peaks and Holbrook. His Svanir and his sister Jorah were affected by Jormag's magic as they ventured onto a frozen lake, onto the frozen lake of Drakar. Within the frozen ice of the lake was Jormag's once dormant champion, and Jormag used this champion to whisper promises of power to Svanir. Svanir turned into a savage ice-covered Norn bear and a champion of Jormag. Insane and bloodthirsty, he proceeded to slaughter mercilessly, and eventually Svanir was slain by his sister Jorah. This was not the end, though. Jormag seduced more male Norn with the promise of power. The cult claimed to be... And this turned into a cult. The cult claimed to be drawing power from the dragon, but the worship actually lent Jormag strength and hastened the dragon's awakening. So, I think it's really interesting that the cult of Svanir seems to he's giving us power, you know, but actually the truth is their worship is actually giving Jormag power, and it's actually waking him up faster. If you actually played Eye of the North, you actually play through this story. You actually go with Jorah and you help her track down her brother. And it's kind of sad, and it's actually one of the campaigns that I did actually play in Eye of the North. And I quite enjoyed it. It was one of the better quests, I feel. So yeah, if you can go back, definitely go and experience that, because you really see where it comes from, and you can actually see what the statues of Jorah, what it relates to. And going back to the Ice Brood and the method of Jormag's corruption, this is a little bit of speculation, and we should have like a little sound bite, which is like speculation or something like that. But Jormag shows unusual habits as a dragon. He lures and corrupts creatures by tempting them with power. I find that his corruption is more reasoned than other dragons. For example, Zaitan, you just wait till they're dead and takes their bodies. And then Krakatoa kind of like just forces it on them, just, you know, completely like obliterates them. Yeah. But you actually see with Svanir, he actually like whispered power, and with the cult of Svanir, they go, oh, he promises me power, and he kind of, it's more elegant and more manipulative. his champions showed that they have the power to influence people's mind. And in a sick twist, Jormag's champions often send newly corrupted ice brews or dragon spawn back to their home villages and get the newly corrupted to destroy and slaughter their own family in revenge. So he actually has this really sort of cruel, sick, twisted kind of manipulation to him. Like, if you're going to attack me, I'm going to send back those people that you sent to attack me back to your home and get them to kill he's going to kill his own wife and kill his own children by his own hand, which is like really, really dark side of a dragon, I feel.
Isn't this tooth called the tooth of the serpent?
Yes, that goes back to my trivia.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Because I was thinking while you were talking about, him being manipulative and all that and being dark and, it kind of made me think of a snake, and, yeah. And I was like, wait a minute. Tooth of the serpent, is that it? Yeah. Anyways,
I totally didn't make that connection. No, it's okay. We'll do it now. One of the, trivia I had was that I think it was Jormag. Oh, I didn't write it down properly. I think it was Jormag relates to a old kind of mythology, and it means an old name like serpent or something like that. Like you just said. And while we're doing this, I'll see if I can find it. I can't believe I didn't write it down. I feel like a terrible podcaster. But something about him, actually, the name relates to the serpent, and then like you said, the tooth hanging in the main hall is actually called Tooth of the Serpent. And I actually did not think of it that way. That is really interesting, that his manipulation and his cruelness and his slyness is sort of how people portray the snake in the creation story of Adam and Eve. Yeah. And that sort of whispers of promises of power and, seduction, that sort of thing, like Jormag does, is very much like that. So I didn't pick that out, so thank you. Yeah, but it just shows like there's so much thought behind Jormag. Yeah, and actually this ties perfectly into my next point, which on my notes I've titled Jormag's seduction and the feminine mystique. It ties in perfectly because I'll read what I have here. Jormag has always had the ability to corrupt his enemies and turn them into ice brood. However, it seems that that females cannot be corrupted. It has been reported that while men always return as ice brood, female Norn never return, leading them to believe that Jormag cannot corrupt female Norn. In regard to Svanir's sister Jorah, Jormag was only able to stop her ability to transform into a bear, rather than corrupt her entirely like he did with Svanir. The Sons of Svanir are an all-male group, claiming that women are not permitted due to Jorah's crimes against Jormag, slaying her brother and Jormag's champion, though some speculate that perhaps females cannot succumb to the corruption as the Sons of Svanir endure after long exposure to the dragon. Though it's not confirmed, but I haven't seen any female of any other species that he corrupts either. To my mind, it's all men. And the Svanir cult is completely all men to the point where they mistreat women. I actually had this wonderful experience where I went on my Kaysee character and I went to this known Svanir place where they couldn't attack me, but they actually talked to me. And I went, I went up to the shaman and I was like, tell me what you know, shaman. I went up to him and I tried to talk to him about the Svanir cult. And I got told to go away and go and deal with my skirt business, go and deal with my woman's business. He wouldn't talk to me because I was a female. Like, even in game, if I wanted lore, I couldn't get information out of him because I was a woman.
Did you make a male character and go back to him?
I was going to get on my husband character, but I never got around to it. But I do know that this has happened in other places of the game. For example, if you go to this place in, what's it called? In Wayfarer Foothills, there's actually a guy that you talk to. And if you go as a male, you have to, I think it's as a male, you have to fight him. And he goes, show me your strength and I'll give you a skill point, basically. And you fight him. But if you go as a woman, he's like, I deal with no women. And you just get the skill point. You don't fight him because you're too pathetic for him to fight. That sort of.
Goodness.
So there's like, I love how they brought this up in the game, and like, I love how this feeling, like, I really feel offended by the Sons of Spania. Like, I really wanted to be like, yo, come and fight me. Like, I can take you down anytime. That sort of feeling.
You want a piece of me? Huh? Punk.
Yeah. You're just asking for a fight. And I imagine, like, that must be so frustrating to female Norn as well. But this ties in so beautifully with what you were saying before about the creation story. But it's kind of in a different way, you know. In the creation story, it's, you know, the woman got tempted, but in this one, the women don't seem to be able to be corrupted or tempted. They just die. You know, he can't turn them into his ice breather. He can't corrupt them, which is really interesting. I love this, and I wonder if they're going to expand on this in the personal story, because if when we do get an expansion about Jormag, the main character has to be a female. Because that would be fantastic, and he can kind of explore how he's, I don't know if he's scared of females, or, you know, he just doesn't like them or something like that. But
Well,
that is actually, sorry, go on.
No, that's fine. Like you said in Guild Wars 1, he just, I think he couldn't turn her. She just lost the ability to to transform into a bear, right?
Yeah. He just seemed to give up on her, and she eventually thwarted his plans. But this is like a point that's not really emphasized in game. There's nothing in the game that goes, you know, you know, he can't turn female. No one's ever picked up on that in game. It's all, the only thing that made me pick up on it was, in a text, he goes, female Norn never return. Whereas male Norn return and come, and so it's one of those little sneaky things, as if, was it done on purpose, or is it just, you know, a coincidence? I'm really interested in it. So yeah, that is my part on Jormag. I hope it was a little bit enlightening, because I really tried hard, especially with the female thing, because feminism is something quite close to my heart, and to know that this sort of thing is in the game, and that you know, that this sort of biasm is in the game, and it can make me feel so deeply, is something very nice.
Now I'm really interested in seeing what happens when Jormag shows up.
Yeah. It's like, are they going to expand on the female thing, or is it just going to be like, oh, we didn't want to have to render female Sons of Spania or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I wasn't sure, because I think I read the same text that you read about the female Norn never returned, but I always I can't remember if that was that was Jormag only, or if that was dealing with the Sons of Svanir. Because if it was the Sons of Svanir, then again it makes sense, because they'll rather kill the women because they can't join because of Jorah's, whatever they call it, that she was awful. Yeah, her crimes against the dragon. I think the only other thing that might be, because I know you had said why did thinking of the Norns stopping and picking up the tooth after they cut it off. I don't know, and I didn't actually think about any of that until you said that, is how they went back and got the tooth. My only thought would be, we know that several of the spirits of the wild no longer exist because they were killed. We know that Owl, which was one of the previous, it's no longer existing spirits of the wild, it attacked, to allow the Norn to travel south, it flew into Jormag's mouth to attack him from inside his throat, and he's now dead, and the Havrunes of Owl no longer can connect with Owl's spirit. So maybe it was right around the same time, like they cut the tooth, and then like Owl went in, and maybe that was a simultaneous thing. Then that's why Owl distracted them, and they're like, well, shit, we better grab this tooth, because no one's going to believe that this happened. Yeah, so we need proof.
Yeah, it does sound like a typical Norm thing to do. Like, wait up, guys. We're like fighting this terrifying dragon, and we've only got like 5 seconds to escape. But I need my trophy, so can you guys give me a hand here?
Yeah,
They use the tooth as a sleigh down the hill.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because we know, most of the dragons seem to be mindless, and that's kind of what we've always been led to believe, is that the dragons are just this they're unthinking killing machines, then they're just like a hurricane, just all destruction. And I mean, Jormag pretty much totally disagrees with that entire thing by, like you said, rather than having people murdered and then coming back to life as his minion, which I believe is the same thing that CoTLorecast does, I believe. When someone is killed, they're risen as... Yes, they are, actually, I think.
So he kills them and then turns them into his crystal beasts.
Because I'm trying to think, because we know the story of, I believe it was... I don't think it was it Ember Doomforge? I forget. It's in Ghosts of Ascalon, where it's either her, or no, it's Almora Soulkeeper, the leader of the Vigil. She was exploring in Ascalon, and, anyway, I'll let whoever has CoTLorecast might be explaining that later, so I don't if not, we'll come back. But I think it was just CoTLorecast flying over caused them to become corrupted, but or branded, rather. But I can't remember if that... Okay, the breath of CoTLorecast. I would assume they die, would be my assumption, but I don't know.
There's obviously like a kind of rule there, because in Or with Zaitan, the bodies were long dead, and he was just like, ooh, I'll have this one and I'll have this one, but with CoTLorecast, there must, I don't think it's the same undead thing, because if it's just bodies that he needs, we could find Colleen walking around at any point, because her body's in that same area. He could just corrupt her body if he wanted to. So maybe it has something more to do, like they have to have an essence of life in them, and then he turns them into crystalline beasts. Rah.
Yeah, and we'll come back to this later, because I just have thoughts about how it seems like most of the things we're dealing with the Elder Dragons come in twos. As in, we know 2 of the Elder Dragons exuded magic. 2 of them, like Zaitan kills his minions and then they come back. Primordus creates his from nothing by making fire and stone. Jormag seduces his. So I'm wondering if there's kind of a similar pattern, and we'll get to this once we explain the rest of the dragons. But I did want to just touch on while you said Jormag's tooth being rended. It's... and like you said, tons of Norn have tried to test the ability to break this tooth, and I believe the lore goes that once one Norn is able to break the tooth of Jormag, or the tooth of the serpent, or whatever they call it, that means that it's time for the Norn to follow that person and take up arms to take back their homeland from Jormag.
You know who I think is going to break the tooth?
Who?
Air's son.
You think? Bram? Yeah.
No.
Come on.
No. It has to be a girl. Maybe he's got a twin somewhere.
It doesn't have to be a girl at all, because
it has to be
Ritlock could have done it. Ritlock could have done it in the book.
No,
he was going to do it.
He's going to go, and then his mom's going to show up, which is Air. And then she won't be able to get turned, but he will. And then this whole family like, no, son, I've loved you all along but never told you. And he's going to be like, I
don't want to follow like this teenage, what's it called? Like teenage heartthrob, this non-teenage heartthrob. He can start a boy band, but I'm not following him into fight Jormag.
And it also all ties into my personal theory that through the living story, we're building Destiny's Edge 2.0.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
I
can't take it.
But it's worth mentioning that they thought in Edge of Destiny, after Jorah had defeated, not Jorah, I'm sorry, Air had brought back Destiny's Edge, and they defeated the current champion. I can't remember the name of it. in Edge of Destiny, they defeated a champion of Jormag, and they assumed that like that night Jorah was gonna go and just crack the tooth, and that like all was well, and we're gonna go take back our land from Jormag, and she couldn't do it.
Yeah,
and she was like all pissed about it and like all sad, and then Ritlock is like, "Let me have a swing at it," and she was like, "No, we're not doing this. We're leaving." But I think that it has to be a very special weapon that'll be able to break this tooth and do damage. Like we saw in the Edge of Destiny, they had the spear made out of blood of Kralkatorrik to fight Kralkatorrik. And I wonder if, like, because Ritlock has Sahathan, which is this awesome magical fire sword, which we know is different than all of the other fire swords that are in the game from Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2, because those are basically knockoffs. And there's a developer interview somewhere saying that, like, even though, you know, you may have like this great thing, like other companies will always make knockoffs of them, like cheap knockoffs. So like Magdare and Sahathan, the two swords, you know, Rurik's and King Adelbern's swords were like the real deal, and all the other fiery dragon swords that like
powers combined.
Yeah, all of those are just knockoffs that some other company made. So I still have my dreams that somewhere deep in below Ascalon is just like an empty factory with just boxes and boxes of fiery dragon swords. But anyway, I'm getting us distracted. But I think you're right, Naveen. I didn't even think about Bram, but you're probably right. But I guess we'll have to see. And once we go and do that, then we'll know that it's time to go take back the lands from Jormag, which it'd be really good to do, I feel, in like a living story right before the release of an expansion. Yeah. Like they don't tell us about the expansion, and it's another, we're back in the Nornlands, and like the ending cutscene of that final piece of living story content is someone cracks the tooth, and then like we get the release for the expansion.
Ooh, that'd be so wonderful.
I mean, living story is greatly designed that things like this could easily work.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we'll move on. Next up is, it's Bubbles. This one's mine. Surprisingly, I was able to find a decent amount of information. So, this dragon has many nicknames. I guess the most appropriate name is the Deep Sea Dragon, but all fans, and even some developers, just go by calling it Bubbles, because we don't know anything about it.
Right.
So we know absolutely nothing, really, about this dragon, about what it looks like, but we have a couple of tidbits of information here and there. Again, we'll go back to good old Decimus and his Movement of the World story, and the line from it says, "In the deepest waters of the sea, another dragon breathed, twisting the waters themselves into tentacled horrors that rose from every lake and river of the land." So that's all we know about the minions, but that's like our little bit of insight into weird tentacle horrors, which we're not even going to talk about what that could mean for the ERPers out there. So we'll leave that alone.
This is going to be the next dragon.
So,
have you seen it? Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know where I'm going with that?
Are you talking about
South Sun Cove?
Oh, no, I know. Trust me, it gets better and more into why I'm thinking that might be what the next dragon is.
Okay.
So, again, we don't know much about this, but if you talk to the Quaggan throughout, all throughout the world, you can pick up little snippets of information that basically they say, years ago, the crate came up out of the deepest depths of the ocean to the Quaggan lands, which then forced the Quaggan to move further away, which is why we're introduced to the Quaggan. This is about 50 years ago in game time, then 50 years prior to us playing the game. The crate move up from the deepest depths of the ocean, which drive the Quaggan away, and the Quaggan are now where we meet them. Also, a couple of Largos as well. There's not very many in the game, but Largos also mentioned that they're seeking shelter away from the unending ocean, which is where all of this is kind of going on. So my other thoughts are maybe Largos as a playable race when we go fight this dragon.
Definitely.
Because I don't know, but we're definitely gonna have a lot more interaction with them as time goes on. So let's see. And again, here's my talks about South Sun Cove, because there's a lot of really interesting lore behind this. When discussing the Lost Shores back in November, Matthew Medina, because someone had asked, why don't we see Risen Karka in the game?
Mm-hmm.
And spoiler alert for anybody that listened to anything I said about Zaitan, because I'm going to spoil part of the game for you. So, and he says, as to whether there can be Risen Karka, while it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility, although pitting Dragon Corruption versus Karka Impenetrable Shell would be an experiment I would be interested to watch, the Karka are recent arrivals to the surface from their original home deep in the ocean. Again, deep in the ocean.
Yeah.
The ocean is a big enough place that the Karka managed to settle on South Sun without encountering many Risen, and they avoided ore for the same reason they fled their home. The Karka are an old species, so they have encountered Elder Dragons and their minions before, and they're certainly smart enough to understand the threat they represent. Now, part of that also ties into the fact that it was another ANET dev confirmed that, again, spoiler alert, the events of the Lost Shores event take place after the defeat of Zaitan. So basically, the Karka stayed where they were and didn't come to South Sun Cove because they couldn't get to South Sun Cove because the Risen were preventing them from doing so.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've dealt with an Elder Dragon presence before. So, and we know they came out of the depths of the ocean. I'm wondering if they're an old ancient race, so sounds like, in my opinion, that they dealt with the deep sea dragon's minions, and they were trying to get away and skirting around the outside of Ore so they wouldn't have to deal with the Risen, and then Zaitan's defeated, and then whoosh, right to South Sun Cove where they're safe.
Right.
And here's where we encounter them.
And we're trying to destroy them. Poor Karka.
Yeah, which has led to one of my original thoughts from way back in November, that we're going to somehow, in some way, ally with the Karka to defeat an Elder Dragon, or the Elder Dragon, since they're one of the few living races that's ever dealt with them before.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sentient Karka is the most scariest thing that I've ever thought of. I hate this Karka character.
I don't
clicky things.
I don't think they're intelligent, but
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But
Yeah.
I'm going to move on and we'll come back. So other than this, again, not a ton of information on the Deep Sea Dragon. The Infinity Coil Reactor has its own blue, which represents the Deep Sea Dragon, but it's under construction. So we actually have no information from the Infinity Coil Reactor. But I wonder if the game will have an update when we get more information about this dragon. Will the Infinity Coil Reactor be updated, and then that place will be up and running? Because as we know, the Inquest is all about learning the power of the Elder Dragons and trying to harness that for their own uses. So, again, we also have non-lore reasons why we don't know anything about this dragon, and this is from Jeff Grubb. He said, the Deep Sea Dragon is a favorite on the boards primarily because we've been so quiet about it. Part of the reason our reticence is that it does not yet have as much direct impact on our 5 primary races. I mean, you have 4 impossibly huge and deadly dragons to start with, and you want a 5th one? Okay. Some Elder Dragons we know a great deal about in the game, while others we don't. The supposed existence of the Deep Sea Dragon gives us a, quote, here be monsters, end quote, feel for the ocean, and for that moment, it's okay. So, basically what he's saying is, it's really good because it's that thrill of the unknown, that we don't know anything about this dragon, and it gives us a lot of time to speculate. And I feel things like that are always good, especially anything to deal with the water. I feel like it taps in a little bit to that Loch Ness Monster kind of a feeling. Like there's this great thing under the water that we don't know anything about, but we're really interested in. And he says supposed. We know it's real, so it's not like a let's try to find it because we don't know if it exists. It definitely does. But I feel it taps into that whole, like he said, that here be monsters kind of a feeling. Now, Naveen, you were mentioning the sclerite stuff, I believe, like before you were talking about.
Possible.
The backpack?
Yes.
Yes.
The weird tentacles. Yeah.
Yes, there was. Let me see if I can find the really quick. Here we go. Sclerite carcass shell. Now this was in the game, and I thought it had some text in the, the Karka have mysterious biological properties, is the text given when you find that backpack shell. So, I don't know, there's a lot of tentacles coming out of it. They have mysterious biological properties, and if you go into the Karka hive, you'll see these tentacles and things bursting out of the wall in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if maybe, again, this has something to do with the next dragon we're going to learn about.
Yeah.
And funny enough, that Sea of Sorrows, which has to deal with ocean and all of this stuff, all about is the third Guild Wars 2 novel. It's coming out this summer. We're in South Sun Cove. You know what else is this summer? The Dragon Bash Festival.
Oh, yeah.
Remember my whole thoughts about maybe the Dragon Bash Festival will be this great ruse where we're having this great party that we defeated Zaitan, and then all of a sudden we get attacked by another Elder Dragon when we're safe.
Yeah.
All of these things are kind of aligning, if you ask me. So, I don't know.
Definitely.
We'll have to see. But that's my piece on Bubbles.
Cool.
Yay. Yeah, that one really excites me because there's so much possibility. Like you said, it's like the thrill of the unknown. Like, are they going to bring it out? Because I definitely think that the what's going on in South Sun Cove has to have something to do with Bubbles. It just has to. So I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So, all right. Well,
so many things.
Next dragon is CoTLorecast.
Oh, yeah, that's my piece. Kralkator! Spoilers! There's a lot of spoilers in my segment, so if you want to just skip it and skip ahead. But, yeah, there are some that I won't mention because I still want to, let people read Edge of Destiny to read a little bit more about it, and then, all the things that we find in game. So CoTLorecast. So, are you ready for this? Imagine yourself in an instance. Nothing like Zaitan. Imagine a giant plane. And then the sky goes dark. And then the storms gather. And then lightning approaches and thunder roars through the skies. And then you look up. No, scratch that. You don't even have to look up. It's a flying mountain. It's bigger than anything you've seen. Zaitan looks like a flea next to this thing. CoTLorecast is huge. It is 20 times larger than Glint, who we've been talking about this whole show. You've encountered in Guild Wars 1 and who was actually CoTLorecast's champion. It is 1,000 feet tall. Its wings can easily block the sun. It is so big that it covers 3 char zones in Guild Wars 1. And we often mistake the spiny hill that divides the char lands just for that, a hill. But that is actually CoTLorecast's spine, so imagine the proportion. Just fighting that dragon is going to be insane. I have no idea how, and please let it not be on flying ships like on Zaitan, because spoiler alert, Zaitan's fight just sucked. I imagine that it's going to be really intense because it's just the way that CoTLorecast is being described. I'm just really thrilled to see first what it looks like and then get to battle. Okay, so the dragon went dormant in prehistoric area preceding the gods' arrival. So imagine this. Very, very long sleep. When it shows itself, it's gonna be cranky. So He's the dragon that woke up last, and when it did in the Blood Legion homelands, it flew over the Charlands, and with his breath, which apparently was golden, it turned the lands black and corrupted everything and most beings in its way. Anything organic can be corrupted by the dragon. If you've played the beta about a year ago, you'll remember there was this, the beta weekend events that we had, and one of the last events was, we were turned into corruptions, and then you'd see the Shatterer flying in the sky, and then people would, turn into purple crystals. Kralkatorik's corruption is a little similar to this. We are being crystallized. All organic things are being crystallized. If you see, oh my gosh, what's the area? Blaze Ridge?
Yeah. Steps.
Yeah, thanks. This is actually the area where you can visit where it left its mark, basically, from when it woke. Everything is kind of purple and dark and crystallized, and so that's what it does. The corrupted beings are said to be shadows of their former selves. But in the book, it's described more as like people turning crazy. We talked about Almora Soulkeeper before. She was a legionnaire for the Blood Legion. She was patrolling with her warband, and Kralkatorik, when it woke, it flew over them, and it turned them all, save Almora, into corrupted beings. They all started to attack Almora, and she had to single-handedly defeat a warband. Why she was immune to it is a very good question. I have no clue. Because her whole warband and everything around her kind of was corrupted by Kralkatorik's breath. I wonder if, it could be like Joramag, where only the males can get kind of corrupted. I don't know. We'll have to see that. They say Kralkatorik was on a mission to defeat Glint, who was its former champion and who you could remember in Guild Wars 1. When it flew over the plains and did this, but I will leave that to you to read in Edge of Destiny because I don't want to give too much anyways. I hate getting spoilers, so I hate to give them. But I know that people want to learn more about it. But, just go by Edge of Destiny, you'll see. Kralkatorik is the reason why, aside from the Orders of Whisperers, movement is prevented in Ilona, and we have not heard from it in a very long, long time. It was simply blocking the way there, not to mention Zaitan's army and the whole 9 yard and all that. Now that Zaitan's dead, though, we might be seeing new development soon, as we were speculating before. They say that Kralkatorik now roams the north of the Crystal Desert, but its current location is really unknown. My guess is when we hear about giant hurricanes, about sandstorm, about huge weather development that's, really sandy and and windy, I guess, it might be Kralkatorik, because that's how you get to know that it's coming. Kralkatorik is one champion, and you probably fought him before. It is the Shatterer. There's some speculation about Kralkatorik that Wooden Potatoes wrote on a blog. It's quite lengthy, so in the description I'm going to leave the link to it, but I'm still going to read a little bit about it. The speculation is that Kralkatorik could have a close connection to Abaddon. So let me read this to you. It seems reasonable that the crystals in Glint's lair and those found in the Searing are from the same source, Kralkatorik, the crystal dragon. The crystals in the Searing were caused by the Cauldron of Cataclysm, an ancient relic that was very likely given by to the Char by the Titans. The lore we have on the Cauldron of Cataclysm is from the Ecology of the Char. It says, when a Char next struck against Ascalon, it was with all the fury the fury of destiny denied. Char, furry, get it?
Mm-hmm.
What you did there?
With a magic item known as the Cauldron of Cataclysm, the shamans called forth the magic of the Titans and performed a ritual of the searing. It is said the cauldron's magic was older than the char, older even than the recorded history, and forged by ancient entities fallen into deep sleep and quiescence. This is obviously a reference to the Elder Dragons. It was written by Rhys Osby for a special guide done by PC Gamer called the Ultimate Guild Wars Guide in September 2007, which means it was done with the story of Eye of the North and Guild Wars 2 in mind. The Movement of the World was also published in this guide, which has been one of the primary sources of information about the time between Guild Wars 1 and Guild Wars 2, as well as some of the lore setup for the Elder Dragons. Given that these two articles were published in conjunction, it seems eminently reasonable that the Cauldron of Cataclysm is a relic of Kralkatorrik, very likely made by Glint when she was Kralkatorrik's champion with his magic. I do not argue that Kralkatorrik directly created the Cauldron of Cataclysm due to the fact that the Elder Dragons are not intelligent. They are always portrayed as mindless, destructive forces like natural disasters. Their champions are, however, the intelligent force behind that destructive power. When Kralkatorrik flew over the Charlands, creating the Dragon Brand, similar crystals were dropped and the land was scarred, although this time the creatures in the Dragon Brand were also turned. Glint's lair has these crystals because she was Kralkatorrik's champion. It seems the searing was the product of Kralkatorrik's magic, but to what end? So, link in the comments. If you're listening in iTunes right now, go to CoTPodcast.com. I'll leave the link there. So that's it. Kralkatorrik, super huge, super epic. Might be in relation to the cause of the searing. That's a big speculation, but that's about it. Dun dun dun. And I don't want to talk about Edge of Destiny because I don't want to spoil everything.
No, it's totally cool. Kralkatorrik is in my mind, one of the more interesting dragons, given the little bits of lore that we do have, given everything that related to Glint. Again, like everything you just read from Wood and Potatoes about how the searing uses it was crystals that fell down in the searing. It seems a little bit too coincidental that it was crystals.
Yeah.
And, it could have been flaming meteorites, which would have been probably more what people would think of.
Yeah, but they really look like purplish crystals. And you can see one in Guild Wars 2, can you?
Yeah, you can actually see the one that hit in one of the ones that hit in the searing in Ascalon. No, and I completely agree. I'm saying if it was just supposed to be some great destructive force, why wouldn't you make it like flaming, fireballs that fell from the sky, not crystals?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I feel like that there's no way that they're just like, oh, we just picked crystals because why not? No, it's definitely got to be tied to Kralkatorrik. And again, like you said, we have all the information from Glint. There's the crystals in Glint's lair. So there's way too much pushing towards, like, this is all somehow tied together. I don't, again, like Wood and Potato says, to what end? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's definitely going to be some awesome times the more we find out about that. And I don't know, you can't really consider it, I don't think, canon, but whether or not Kralkatorrik can corrupt female characters, we don't really know. Like you said, why was Elmora Soulkeeper spared when her rest of her warband? Which I would be willing to bet there was at least one female char in her warband. But
probably. But who knows?
If the beta weekends were any kind of indication, then females could be, because you could be female corrupted.
Yeah, that's true.
Which was awesome, and they should totally bring that event back once that comes out as like PvP.
I, you know how in Guild Wars 1 you go into Glint's lair and you can steal her eggs and make her angry and then defeat her to get the bonus mission stuff. Her eggs are crystallized. Glint and Kralkatork, maybe?
Well, don't forget that Glint does have a baby. That you do the whole Glint's mission in the Central Transfer Chamber. Not the Central Transfer Chamber. You do it in Eye of the North, where that's how you used to farm destroyer cores, where Glint's baby is a full grown, or like a baby dragon, which would, in 250 years, presumably have grown to a full-grown dragon. So there's another crystal dragon out there. Maybe once that dragon becomes active, then Kralkatork will become active.
Oh my goodness.
It's things like that make me wonder just how far back did they know that they wanted to do dragons? Like, to me, that says, oh, you know, she was just a crystal dragon and Kralkatork kind of came after and they just sewed it together. But some things that they do also made me go, like the Searing and Ascalon makes me go, just how far back did you know you want to do dragons and all the stuff that you've added? Is this, you know, how related to it? If I could just, like, I don't know, kidnap an ArenaNet employee, by the way, if an ArenaNet employee goes missing, that was so totally not me. And just, you know, just to talk to them and just to see, like, how far back would be one of the questions I asked. How far back did you know and how interconnected is this lore?
Yeah.
Well, you know, when Naveen had mentioned one time that originally they had thought about doing like angels and demons kind of a thing. But it is interesting. I mean, we know there's other dragons, like Kunavang, for instance, is another dragon that we know of from Guild Wars 1 that so far any dragon we've met in any incarnation of either game has been a dragon champion. We didn't think Glint was, but then Glint turned out to be. So does that mean that Kunavang was a dragon champion? And if so, which dragon? The Deep Sea Dragon, perhaps? Is it Bubbles' old champion was Kunavang? I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know. We'll have to see. Kunavang was very serpentine. It'll look kind of almost like maybe Snake, maybe in the water. Who knows? I don't know. All right.
Speculation.
So let's Kaysee, let's go to the final, presumed to exist, but pretty much is definite that it does exist. The final jungle dragon.
Yeah. Alright, so to finish it off, the jungle dragon, I'll just read a little excerpt thing that I have and then I'll explain a bit more. So recently the Derman Priory unearthed a tomb mentioning a presently unknown sixth dragon. Further clues were found in Ra, a telescope created by the Jotun to detect rising elder dragons showed a new constellation forming, alluding that the sixth elder dragon is now awakening. Clues in the Inquest Crucible of Eternity allude to the dragon's name being Mordramoth. The alpha boss uses powers based on a dragon's powers, or uses skills based on a dragon's powers, and all of them are accounted for except for an earth-based skill called the Teeth of Mordramoth. Developer Colin Johansson speaks of the dragon being situated in the Maguma jungle. While not much is presently known about the jungle dragon, the Inquest has shown to know a lot more about Mordramoth. It is insinuated they have been able to obtain the samples of the dragon's essence. So this is just a little bit that I put out there. But there's quite a lot of speculation, and as for cold hard lore facts, that's pretty much it. What I just read there is that we didn't really know the dragon existed until an interview with Colin Johansson where he was asked, "Oh, what do you think would be a good new expansion?" And he was like, "Oh, hey guys, I'm just going to randomly mention the jungle dragon in the Maguma jungles and say that I would really like that as the next expansion." And then we kind of attached a name to that, which was the Teeth of Mordremoth from the dungeon. If you haven't played that dungeon before, which is the COE Crucible of Eternity dungeon, it's this alpha, and it's he's an amalgamation of all the essences of the dragon. If you've been anywhere near it, you know that the Inquest in that area are just purely studying the dragon's power. And you've heard through this podcast that they have rooms. Zaiten was black. Bubbles has his own room. And there's also a green room, which is all have beautiful plants and sort of thing. And then the fact that the alpha uses this earth-based guild, which is called the Teeth of Mordremoth, we've just assumed that the dragon's name is Mordremoth. And for a dragon name, Mordremoth is pretty cool, if you ask me. So that is the cold, hard facts of the situation, is that we don't really know very much. We know he exists. We know he exists in the Maguma jungle. He, she, I don't know, genderless. Thank you, though. It exists, and that it is currently waking up. But there is so much speculation on the internet about this. There is absolutely pages and pages about speculation about Mordremoth, mostly because people believe he has connection to the Sylvari. So I'm just going to put a little disclaimer out here that anything I say from now on is purely speculation, and this is all people's ideas, and whether it is true or not is not a big thing. Basically, one of the things that people tend to believe is that the Sylvari are actually somehow connected to Mordremoth, because they were found as seeds, and they were planted, and it's kind of like a really magical, mystic thing that they form, that this plant comes to life. And you have to remember that the Sylvari are not Sylvari, as in they are not a species in a sense. They can actually take the form of anything, because if you remember, the tree gave the form of humans because it was built on human graves. So if it was connected to an elder dragon at one point, the elder dragon can probably manipulate it to be anything it wanted it to be. And then what also makes people believe that the Sylvari are part of an elder dragon is the fact that they cannot be corrupted. So we know that Zaiten can corrupt all other races, but the Sylvari are immune to the corruption. And a reasonable explanation of this would be because they're already corrupted, because they already belong to another dragon. You don't see Zaiten nicking some of KoTLorecast's crystal minions, that sort of thing. It's because they're already corrupted. So that is a really big thing about, I'm sure if you go to Wooden Potatoes page, he has a video on what he thinks, and if you go to all the forum sites, people have their own beliefs. I personally think it would be an absolutely wonderful concept to run with, because it would really give the Sylvari this identity crisis, like, oh, we've been brought up on all these pure and wonderful values, and hey, what do you know, the Nightmare Court actually have a legitimate claim as to, that they're born inherently evil. And it'll also explain why the Nightmare Court have this longing to be evil, is because they were actually originally from an elder dragon, and as we know from Glint, that champions can change their minds. They can be sentient, and so it is entirely possible for the seed to have been brought up on completely separated from its elder dragon and on the virtues of Ventari. So it is entirely possible for them to be good. So I personally think it's an absolutely great idea. If it wasn't originally designed that way, like if they were just like, oh, we need some plant beings, quick, make it a story, that sort of thing. Even if it is that, it is such a great story to go with, because it actually does fit on a lot of levels, and it will explain the mystery of why the Silvari can't be corrupted. But Mordramoth is one of those ones where there's a lot been buzzing around it lately. A lot of people have been wondering, a lot of people have been giving their own thoughts. And also, if you have your own thoughts as to Mordramoth, please, by all means, send them in to us at host@chroniclesdeteria.com, because I'd love to hear. I personally love hearing everyone's thoughts on the Silvari and Mordramoth. Mm-hmm. But as for actual hardcore lore, there's not very much. That's all I've got, sorry.
Well, that's a lot, considering, how little information there is right now on it.
Yeah, I think Colleen has a specific line in Ghosts of Ascalon that talks about, her exact wording on that, Silvari can't get corrupted, and I forget the exact wording, but she basically talks to that too. And yeah, like you said, not being able to be corrupted seems to be what everybody thinks is why they are the minions of an Elder Dragon, and that the Pale Tree itself is actually, a minion of Mordramoth. So we don't know if Mordramoth is awoken, but we do know that the Maguma jungle, which, for those of you who know Guild Wars 1 was this lush forested area, is now changed to the Maguma Waste. And considering that dragons are supposed to be these mindless things that just eat magic, maybe that's why it's now a wasteland, because Mordramoth has been consuming the magic of the world there and turned it into this desert area. And that we know that the Silvari woke up 25 years ago. Does that mean that technically Mordramoth woke up 25 years ago, and that's why his minions are around?
It's certainly it seems like a bit of an odd coincidence if the Silvari wake up and then all of a sudden where we know the jungle dragon is, the whole area completely changes. Like they wake up at the same time.
Right, yeah. It's although, again, we do know that the Destroyers, now that I think about it, the Destroyers woke up before Primordus did when we fought them in Guild Wars 1. So there is possible that, this is just like preemptive to Mordramoth actually waking up. But what I was talking about before with the things happening in twos, now we know that the corrupted, any of Jormag's minions are lured in with power, and we know that Zaitan gets their minions, corrupts his minions by killing them and bringing them back. And we know that Kralkatorrik's minions, they're not necessarily killed, but what was once one thing is then converted into something else against their will, kind of like the Risen are. Whereas the minions of Jormag are converted by being lured by power. Primordus makes his out of nothing. So I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that Bubbles makes his tentacle monsters out of nothing. And then we know, so that's 2, and then we have someone's offered power, and that's what makes them a minion of Jormag. Maybe the Silvari, being the minions of Mordramoth, aren't necessarily offered power, but they're essentially offered life and this way to go decide things for themselves, whether or not they want to be a minion or not, and that's why you have Nightmare Court and things like that. I don't know. It's total speculation, but...
Yeah, there's one thing that puts a little bit of a pin in the fact that, it's a champion of Mordramoth, is the fact that they Silvari come with a keen sense of fighting the dragon. And I think there's a line somewhere where it goes, the Pale Tree felt the movement of the earth, or something like that, or it felt through the earth, and it basically decided that it was going to call out to the earth. It was going to come out to help the earth, and that doesn't really seem like it's connected in a certain way. But at the same time, it's entirely possible. We know it's entirely possible for the champions to change their mind. So the tree could have changed its mind, could have gone, it could have been abandoned for so long by Mordramoth, and then hear the Earth being completely hurt, and then go, yeah, you know what? I'm going to start producing some good old Silvari and get them on the other side. Which, you know, a lot of people speculate that Mordramoth could be a good dragon. I don't know if I like that so much, but it's entirely possible.
Well, what I also think about is we know that Elder Dragons can have multiple champions. We also know that there's multiple pale trees.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, maybe Mordramoth is the smartest of all the dragons. Rather than waiting till one champion's pretty much on the outs before he makes another one, just drops seeds everywhere. And then, like, go forth, my minions, and grow. And that's kind of just what happens.
But the thing is that it would have lost connection with this current pale tree, and that's why it's got such high virtues, and they feel the dream of, you know, killing the dragons, whereas ones that are still connected to Mordramoth would come out and feel the dream of killing humans and getting power for their master and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that could be here, and we know there was the old whatever, I can't remember the name of this, the forest creatures that you fight in the Maguma jungle that we had speculated way back in our first Silvari episode that they might have been made from a previous pale tree, because when there were no humans, like the forest the forest spirits that are out there. I can't remember what they're called. But that, you know, they were made...
Dryads?
Yes, the Dryads, right. Because they were made maybe on the graves of a different being, not a human, so they look completely different. So that might be why, which again also allows Mordramoth, if it is indeed a dragon, to be completely adaptable to the surroundings, rather than having to rely on, you know... Well, I mean, I guess they all are kind of adaptable now that I think about it, because the other ones can just corrupt an existing creature, and Mordramoth can just birth brand new ones out of seeds, which again, also weird. just a little bit odd, but when you think about it, we know initially that the Silvari weren't going to be so plant-like, and then they did the redesign. So maybe when they did the redesign was when they kind of came up with this whole Mordramoth idea.
Yeah, yep.
And
they did become very planty. Originally they were going to be like elf-like.
Yeah, just kind of green elfy people. And I don't know if you can take it, but also remember, if you start a Silvari character in your dream to fight a dragon, I mean, the thing you fight at the end is a dragon made of trees.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not that's just supposed to be your dream's interpretation of Zaitan, even though Zaitan is clearly flying around Or, and we know Traherne has been there, so he knows what it looks like.
Yeah.
But it's a dragon made entirely out of plants. So, you know, as a Silvari, your wild hunt is to fight a dragon, basically. But who knows if Zaitan was the dragon you were designed to fight?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I don't
know.
There's a lot of on the internet that say, you know, this is a symbol of the Silvari struggle away from Mordramoth, and, you know, like defeating the dragon is, you know, the struggle away from Mordramoth, and, you know, you're free once you get out. But then someone else pointed out is that not every Silvari fights the dragon in their dream. So it's just only, you know, certain selected people.
True.
But it is weird that texture, you know, in other starting areas, the bosses that you fight, the big epic bosses are used other places in the game. Yet I've never seen that dragon again. So I bet it will show up again once we fight Mordramoth. Once Mordramoth starts being introduced to us, that dragon skin will show up again.
Yeah, I would like to think so. So,
All right then.
yeah, I think that's it, because anything else we're going to get into is going to be ridiculously crazy speculation.
Yes, super speculation.
More so than we already have had.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so for the very long, I guess, awaited, unless anybody has anything else they want to say.
No.
No,
Alright.
good.
So for the very long awaited topic that we've danced around for quite a while,
Yeah.
the Elder Dragons. For, I guess, and again, CoTLorecast episode number 1. I am Lagwyn.
And I'm Kaysee.
And I'm Naveen.
And we will see you next time.
Bye.